Morning, Chris. All right, we're all here. Chris, you good to go?
Good to go.
All right. It's 5:30 and we'll call the Tuesday, June 17th Planning Commission meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Miss Proper,
Here.
Mr. Giller,
Here.
Mr. Lees,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Guerra,
Here.
Miss Gort,
Here.
Mr. Frechter.
Here. Thank you, Chris. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
No changes.
Great. With that, I'm going to open the meeting to public comment on historic preservation issues that are not on the agenda tonight. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't I say that? No, I guess I didn't. Thank you, Susan. Any changes to the minutes? Additions or corrections? Additions or corrections? Boy, you guys are just all over me tonight. You can Oh, good.
It's support here.
All right, great. So then I will open the meeting to public comment on historic preservation issues that are not on the agenda this evening. As part of a certified local government, we are asked to take public comment on historic preservation issues in the community. And with that, I will open the meeting to any public comment. Please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you're attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself. Do we have anybody online or on the phone there?
We have several people online, but no hands are raised.
All right, anybody in the audience tonight just to comment on historic preservation issues? Okay, we will move on to the consent calendar.
Nope.
Work session.
The work session. I didn't sleep well last night, folks, so.
Something in the food that you ate.
Yes.
saying.
Who is presenting the work session tonight? The government training.
Should I just stand here? Hi, I'm Lindsay Flewelling, the Preservation Planner and Certified Local Government Coordinator from History Colorado. I've probably met most of you previously, but it's great to be here again. I was just going to do a brief overview of the CLG program and give a couple updates. And then feel free to ask any questions if you have them after that. But so yeah, the Certified Local Government Program, as most of you know, is a partnership program between the local government, the National Park Service at the federal level, and the State Historic Preservation Office at the state level. And at History Colorado, in Colorado, it's at History Colorado, and we also call it the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. I always say because we like to have as many acronyms as possible. So there's currently 67 CLGs in Colorado and about 2,100 nationwide. So we have a pretty robust program for our state's population size. The big benefits of the CLG program are certified local government grants. So we get a portion of our office funding from a federal grant, and we're then required to spend 10% of that funding on local government subgrants. And we also are really fortunate to have a match from the State Historical Fund to be able to provide those grants with no match to the CLGs. So those cover things like preservation plans, surveys and survey plans, design guideline updates, education and outreach projects, so things that specifically benefit your local government preservation program. Those are due every January, so keep an eye out for that. CLGs are also eligible for some National Park Service grants. We're not quite sure what the direction is going to be on those, but for example, there's a current one open for CLGs that have had federally declared disasters within the past 2 years to work on buildings that have been damaged by disasters or capacity for the local government to respond to that for those historic resources. So there are still grants available to CLGs through the National Park Service. Another big benefit is that your locally designated properties and any properties that are contributing to local landmark districts are eligible for our state residential and commercial tax credits. And the residential tax credit program is really the big incentive for residential property owners. That's 35% of qualified rehabilitation expenditures, which is really great. So essentially you're getting a third of the funds back for any work that you're doing on your historic property. And these are improving by 2027. So currently it's a tax credit that can get spread out over 10 years. So if you have a smaller tax liability on your state income tax, then you can spread it out and get the credit back on your taxes. But some people don't have that much tax liability over a 10-year period, so they never get the full money back. But we had legislation passed last May, so a year ago, that is changing it in 2027 to be fully refundable. So essentially you'll do the work on your property, submit all the receipts, and then when you file your taxes the following April, then the state will just write you a check for that tax credit amount. So you're getting the full amount back much more quickly, and it'll be really great for the residential tax credit program. That's run through our office. We have Sarah Capel, our tax credit and incentive specialist, who reviews all of the projects. So if anybody knows of anyone doing work on their historic residence, she's always super excited. She's like the most enthusiastic person I've ever met. So she'd be very happy to talk to any property owners about work that's appropriate for their property. And then for the commercial tax credits, those are worth 35% on the first $2 million you spend on a project and then 30% on the rest of your expenditures. So that's also a really great program. And since you're in a National Register district, people could also, for commercial properties, get the federal tax credits, which is an additional 20%. So essentially getting 55% of their costs back on their historic properties. And Sarah is again the first point of contact for those programs as well. The other big benefits for the CLG program, we do trainings and scholarships to go to the Saving Places Conference. I also have a webinar series. We're going to have a webinar in about a month in July with the State Historical Fund staff going over all the different opportunities with State Historical Fund grants. Their next grant deadline is October 1st, so kind of prepping to get ready for that. If anyone knows of any projects, the projects have to have a public benefit, but it can be publicly or privately owned properties. And then another webinar, we're going to have one in November that's on disaster and resilience planning for historic resources. So I'm very excited that we've got that put together and have some more resources available for disaster and resilience. We also have Compass, which is our statewide cultural resource database. So you can essentially find out all the information that's been collected in the past on the properties in your local area. There's also a role in the Section 106 process and the National Register review process. So those are all great benefits for the CLG program. On the flip side, the responsibilities are to enforce your own local ordinance. So one of my main jobs is to make sure everybody is following their own rules that they've set for themselves. Establish and maintain a commission, which you guys have no problems with, thankfully. Have a system of survey and inventory. So usually we expect survey projects like every 10 or so years for the like non-urban local governments. So that's something to consider. Send your meeting minutes over to our office, which Breckenridge has no problem with, which I really appreciate. Submit an annual report that's due every November and your staff takes care of that. And then every 4 years, there's a CLG evaluation. So that's why I'm here tonight. So the evaluation entails me attending a planning commission meeting, and then I'll have a meeting with staff to just talk about sort of the vision for the future of the preservation program. And then I read through all of the annual reports from the past 4 years. I've already read all your meeting minutes. So just putting all that information together, and then I'll get an evaluation report out to you. And then other than that, so that's the basics of the CLG program. I also wanted to mention that we have our Colorado Heritage for All initiative right now. So back in 2019 and 2020, there was a survey done of the properties that are on the Colorado State Register of Historic Properties. And it was found that less than 4% of them were associated with Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ plus women and other underrepresented community groups. So in honor of the America 250, Colorado 150 coming up next year, we have an initiative to put 150 places on the state register that are associated with underrepresented communities. And we just had one on the National Register, the Bunkhouse Lodge, it's technically in unincorporated Summit County, but very near here. And they just did their plaque ceremony last weekend during Pride. So that's one of the 150. But if any others come to mind from any of those underrepresented community groups, we would love to honor them. And we have 3 people who are on staff for the next year and a half who are writing National and State Register nominations. So it's just a really great opportunity that doesn't normally exist to get those nominations done. Yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. But if you have any questions or ever need any resources, that's my main role, to either connect you with the right person or find out information for you. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions now or anytime.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
That one, is the Barney Courthouse on your list? The state landmarks?
I mean, I think it is nationally designated, but I'm not sure if it's under the correct category. So I think that is definitely something to look into.
I think it's National Register eligible, but the documentation's not completed. Does that sound right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay.
And we are, there are some properties that are listed on the National or State Register, but they're just under like architecture and not for their associations with significant people. So it might be for that as well, but I'll definitely look that up and get back to you.
Yeah, are there any concerns with federal grant money?
Yeah, so the situation is essentially 60% of the State Historic Preservation Office's funding comes through a federal grant. And that's the case in every state. And then the states match it with 40% grant match. And so the fiscal year 25 funding that was passed by Congress in March was at the same levels as like the past 2 years, so FY24 and 23. But that hasn't been released to the states, so we don't currently have any FY25 funding. And then in the FY26 budget that's being considered by Congress now, historic preservation has been zeroed out. So there's definitely a concern.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
But I do think we're really lucky in Colorado to have the State Historical Fund that's funded through gaming in Central City, Blackhawk, and Cripple Creek. So we'll still have that available. They give out about $11 million in grants a year. And then our state tax credit program is funded through the state. So we'll still have those great preservation incentives.
Great. Thank you. You have questions? Well, thank you.
You.
Lindsay.
Thank you. We will move along to the consent calendar. And first up, we have the BGV Parcel 3 Site Plan Modification, 355 North Park Avenue, PL 2025-0116. Would anybody like to call that up?
Follow it up.
Great.
Would Sarah like to make a presentation? You need to make a motion.
Second.
I move that we call up the BGV parcel 3.
Second.
Roll call now.
Ms. Gort,
Here.
Ms. Proper,
Here. Oh, yes. We're all really nervous. There's no kissing me.
Is he here tonight? I see.
Open up the document.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Mr. Fruchter,
Yes, and I'm here.
and finally, Mr. Giller.
Okay.
And before we get started, I need to disclose that I responded to Sarah's email from one of the owners in the Woods neighborhood saying that I felt that the email was interesting and had some merit, and I was looking forward to discussing it tonight. So if that's compromises anything and I need to leave, I'm prepared to do that.
Well, thank you, Mark. I think we should open that up for discussion, whether Mark can make an impartial decision on this matter. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mark on that? Anybody feel that Mark,
Are we allowed to ask questions to Mark? Like, I don't know the protocol here, like,
what would be the
we ask-
protocol for that, Mark?
You certainly ask questions of Mark if you want, yeah.
okay, yeah. Can you elaborate more of what you talked about in your discussion and with the people in the neighboring neighborhood?
Well, I mean, I think
Or what do I need?
there wasn't, I don't believe there was, right? You were just
There
responding.
was
to
no
the email.
discussion. I just responded to Sarah's email that went to all of us with respond all, saying that I thought the email from the owner in the Woods property was interesting, made some meritorious observations, and I was looking forward to discussing it with the entire panel tonight.
Oh, okay.
That's the gist of what I said.
Nothing after that.
So I think the issue here is whether anybody feels that Mark can remain impartial on this issue. And if anybody feels that way, we should bring that up. Anybody like to comment?
I just think Mark was saying that he was, anticipating a robust discussion on the topic, and I don't think there's any issue with it.
Alan, do you have any issue?
I don't have any issues, no.
Lane?
No issue.
I have no concerns.
Mike?
I have concerns. I think it was really inappropriate. We're a quasi judicial body here and we try and follow the rules. I'm not going to ask that he recuse himself, but I think it was inappropriate.
Thank you, Mike. I agree with you, Mike, and I of course can't say whether or not Mark is impartial here, but I think just the suggestion that he might, my suggestion would be that he recuse himself.
Okay.
It's do we want to do we need to take a vote on that, Mark?
You do,
Okay,
yes.
I would suggest that Mark recuse himself from this meeting. Anybody want to second that or
Second,
can we have a roll call on that, please?
Does Mr. Lees vote? He's happens to be the.
I don't believe Mr. Lee's.
Okay. Then Mr. Giller.
explain yes versus no in this.
Oh, voting and I guess if he should recuse himself.
Yes.
Miss Proper,
No.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Miss Gort,
No.
Mr. Fruchter.
No.
Okay.
The motion fails 2-4.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Sarah Crump, Senior Planner for the record. Let me make sure I'm sharing this. We have quite a few people online, so I want to make sure everybody can see. So one moment. All right, everybody, good evening. So tonight before you, we have a parcel 3 Breckenridge Grand Vacations application for site plan modification. As you recall, you approved this project back in November of 2024 with a slightly different site plan wherein the circular drive was more centered in the parcel and the townhomes, duplexes rather, were arranged around the circular drive. The Colorado Passenger Tramway Board came back to the applicant and denied their previous application and site plan, stating that they do need to maintain a 35-foot aerial easement beneath the direct path of the gondola. This is due to safety concerns with the gondola. Should there be any emergency egress requirements or just emergency access needed to the gondola cars, then that would be easily done with this modified site plan. So they're coming back to the commission requesting site plan revisions. They do have prior authorization from the Tramway Board to go forward with this site plan. So that's already been approved. So no need to worry that if they go back to the Tramway Board, this wouldn't pass muster. They've given a thumbs up already on this site plan. So for this project, I'm going to talk a little bit about the what the relocation entails for each of the buildings that are proposed to be moved, how that affects our policies. Some policies are absolutely not affected, and they're not proposing any changes to architecture, materiality, density, use, all of those, or building height. All of those items remain the same as previously approved. So to point out and start with, the request is to, let's zoom in here. Just doesn't want to do that. So these three buildings here on the south end of the proposal, can't see the numbers, but I believe it's 2.1, 2.2, and 1.3 are the building names. These are the ones that are being relocated and pushed further to the north on the site. Previously, only these two duplexes were on the east side, and now there's a third duplex, which does adjust the east side setbacks somewhat. And the other change is the lengthening of this private driveway and turnaround. Prior to the modification proposal that ended approximately here in the center of the site, this turnaround size is required for emergency vehicle access due to the number of residences off of this private drive. And so the proposal is to lengthen this. It's okay that that is underneath the gondola easement since it's not a permanent structure. And then they've relocated their trash enclosure onto this southeast side as well. Moving the buildings also required changes to the drainage plan. So previously there was a little bit wider spacing between buildings 2.1 and 2.2. And you can see now those are slightly closer together with building 1.2 moved up to the north. And there's a new drainage and retention area proposed over here on the south side. And previously there was greater distance between these buildings and a drainage area on this west side. That's no longer the case. And before we go too much further, I do want to update the status of the project as it is currently. I'm sure you've driven by, you can see that there's construction work happening. At this time, the project has an infrastructure permit and a right-of-way permit. Those have been issued by Public Works. They also have 8 building permits. Those are for buildings 3.1, 3.2, 1.1, and 1.2. And those buildings are not proposed to change locations with this modification request. And they do currently have site activity going on with clearing, grading, utility installation, and I believe they're already to the point of foundation work on those 4 structures. some implications of the modification request. Mainly it impacts our policy 9 setbacks and placement of structures. Landscaping, and there's some impacts to the amount of wetland area that must be mitigated with the change request. And then finally, the changes to the proposed landscaping and tree removal. We need to look at that compared to the concept plan that was approved with the development agreement for this project. So quickly looking at placement of structures. You can see the structures in gray are the new proposed locations. Red is where they were moved from. This furthest to the east building now becomes the closest building to Park Avenue. The structure setback is still well within the perimeter boundary setbacks that we've established in policy 9. And so there's no concerns there with that proposed location. They're still meeting those minimum requirements and well exceeding it. I did want to point out that, and just a reminder that for this project, we are using perimeter setbacks. So the distances between buildings may be smaller than typically seen in other like single family neighborhoods. This is allowed through policy 9 based on multifamily unit approvals. So along Woods Drive, you can see that these 3 structures that are accessed off of Woods Drive, they are close together. These structures also received a waiver from some engineering proposals, engineering requirements for drainage because of the robust drainage plan that they are implementing for this. They were allowed to have those requirements waived, so the buildings are closer together.
Can you explain for everybody what perimeter setbacks are? So that they
Sure.
understand?
Yeah, so in perimeter setbacks, this is only used for multi-unit residential development. It allows for the setbacks to be for the entire site. So we're looking at the perimeter parcel boundary, so the property lines, and it requires a 15-foot front, 5-foot side, and 15-foot rear, I believe. And so the buildings could be placed anywhere in the interior of the site as long as they're meeting those setbacks against the property line. And for this particular lot, because it has 3 road frontages, it actually has 3 front setbacks. So all along here is 15 feet required.
So if I understand, as long as the maximum density is not exceeded and the mass is not exceeded and everything is within the perimeter setbacks, those buildings can basically go anywhere within that envelope. Is that correct?
They are separate policies, so we would consider density, whether it's exceeding density or not, as a separate policy than placement of structures policy 9. But it is correct that as long as they're meeting the perimeter setbacks, the buildings could be placed anywhere. Again, following building and code and engineering requirements anywhere within the site. Okay.
So what I'm getting at is that we approved 8 buildings.
Mhm.
And those buildings, I referred to the density and the mass. But those buildings are approved, and as long as they're within the perimeter setbacks, they can be placed wherever.
They could, there are other considerations in this case, however, because the development agreement that this project falls under requires other considerations like the landscaping concept plan. So anywhere within the boundaries of the development agreement and the concept plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I think that we should let Sarah finish her presentation. We'll get to questions at that time. Thank you, Sarah.
Yep, you're welcome. So moving on to discussions of landscaping policy 22 and the concept plan for landscaping. So the development agreement waived policy 22. In exchange for that waiver, the applicant agreed to, this is written in the staff report as well, to accommodate the effort to preserve trees along Park Avenue and provide revegetation efforts consistent with the conceptual plan that was included in the development agreement. So with the moving of these three buildings, there's some additional trees that would need to be removed to accommodate this new plan, as well as moving the drive lane aisles. So there's 4 trees on this 1, 2, 3, and I think this 4th one here. Those would need to come out to accommodate the new location of this building, as well as the drainage and retention pond. And those are the trees that we are considering to be part of the buffer area. The staff is considering those trees are buffer trees according to the concept plan. So the applicant did meet on site more than once with staff during this revision process and through the application process. We looked at individual trees to determine the ability for the applicant to retain those trees. And we were able to have them revise the site plan somewhat to save this cluster of trees here that's in bright yellow. And so they are retaining those 3 trees that are also considered buffer trees. With the application, the applicant proposes over, it's 166 new tree plantings and almost 1,000 new shrubs and smaller trees. The tree proposal includes, I would say, the majority of new plantings along the buffer area along Park Avenue. Those are shown in light green and dark green here. The trees that they're proposing are between 8 feet and 14 feet. That's a little bit of a greater and larger size than we would typically see. For deciduous trees, they're usually 4 to 6 feet. For evergreen trees, typically 6 to 10 feet. So going between 8 and 14 feet is greater than average. And they're proposing, again, more trees than average. Typically a project like this, if policy 22 wasn't waived, they would be warranted that +2 or +4 points for the number of trees that they're adding. I also want to point out they are retaining a large amount of tree buffer between the new development and the Woods Drive townhomes to the south. And I also wanted to show you on the concept plan itself, if I can get to that page, there's quite a few trees that were shown on the concept plan that are to the south of this programming area, and they are not showing them on their site plan because they're out of the site plan, but they will be retaining those trees as well. So I just want to point that grouping out to you of trees that are retained. And I apologize, I don't recall the exact page number, so I'm scrolling here a bit. I promise you, we don't just throw all these pages in here to confuse you. They're all meaningful. So we're at the concept plans. Here we go. Unable to zoom in tonight for whatever reason, but it's these groupings of trees that are on the south side of the property line. If you go to page 221 on your laptop, you could see that. So I just want to point out that they are, well, now we've zoomed in. They are keeping those trees, and they're not shown on their site plan, but this is outside of the disturbance area, and just making the note that they're retained. So tonight, we have the one question for the commission, and that's, do you agree that the modified landscaping plan and tree buffer meet the requirements of the development agreement? So at the end, that's the question that we'll be asking you to discuss. And one more thing before we move on, the development agreement also waived policy 31 regarding water quality. In exchange for that waiver, the development agreement laid out how wetlands impacts would be mitigated. And if any additional wetlands impacts were found through the development process, that the applicant would follow that procedure. And the applicant has identified additional wetlands impacts both to the permanent area as well as the 25-foot wetland setback. Engineering has reviewed the modified proposal and agreed that the area that they claimed will be disturbed, it all checks out, and they've already purchased those additional wetlands credits to make up for that new area. So there's going to be some temporary disturbance in that 25-foot wetland setback during construction, but no structure will be within the wetland setback permanently, and all of that will be mitigated. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover regarding the modification request, but I'm happy to take questions from the commissioners now.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And then we'll move on to questions. I also see that Shannon Smith is here from engineering. Do you have any questions for her? Matt, would you like to start us off? Any questions?
I don't think I have any questions.
Elaine, questions?
I don't have any questions either.
Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for bringing us up to date. So you had said, I think it's correction, you had said the 3 units along with their access directly from Woods Drive did not move from the original plan that we approved, but they actually have moved slightly.
Let's clear this up. I'm sorry, I just glossed over this. So between the development plan approval that you guys made, they came in for their building permits, and through a series of changes, whether it be building code requests or engineering codes or applicant preference, these 3 buildings the locations were adjusted slightly. So previously they were kind of diagonally tilted to the southeast, and now they're all perpendicular to Woods Drive. The distances between them very similar to how it was before. It's just the orientation shifted ever so slightly.
Yeah.
So good point. Thank you for reminding me to talk about that.
Okay, and then couple more things. So partly this is in reference to some issues that were raised by the public. I just wanted to confirm. So based on my using a scale on the screen, it looks like the real actual separation between the buildings, if you go wall to wall, looks like it's closer to about 18-20 feet, not 10 feet.
That's my best judgment as well, looking at the plan set.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then same thing from the front of the garage door to the right of way, it looks like it's about 22 feet.
Yeah,
Garage door
and
to
it
the-
should be 23 unless there was a waiver granted. That's the minimum
Okay.
from the right of way that we would allow unless there was a waiver
Okay.
granted.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a minimum of at least 22, basically going off the screen. I think that's, thanks for confirming that.
Thank you, Alan. Susan?
Thanks. I do have a couple of questions. So when I was looking at the concept plan, it appeared that there were more trees along Woods Drive than are now being proposed. And it wasn't really discussed in your report. Can you explain to me why those landscaping changes are required and whether they meet the terms of the development agreement?
So the development agreement really speaks about the buffer trees that are along Park Avenue. It doesn't necessarily speak to the buffer trees along Woods Drive. They are proposing, I want to go to so these are remove trees. They do have some of their landscaping on here, but I want to go to the landscaping page for Woods Drive, which is here. The applicant did have additional trees proposed here, and they were asked to remove those because they're within the right of way. And then if additional trees here would not meet defensible space requirements. And so there are fewer trees proposed in this location along Woods Drive. But there are still some trees proposed. These are all aspen here, the larger white circles, and aspen on the northwest side as well. And this plan doesn't show any of the trees that are retained, but there is a large grouping of trees here between Woods Drive townhomes and the proposed development.
Okay, the other question I had, I didn't understand what it meant to purchase additional wetland mitigation credits and how that mitigated the additional disturbance.
I'm gonna let Shannon answer this.
Wetlands disturbance was contemplated in this project at a certain acreage. They were allowed to buy credits for a project offsite rather than build their own wetlands to make up for that loss. And they've just added more acreage to that agreement.
So it's offsite. Okay.
They're buying into a bank so that one big project can get constructed, which is more beneficial than a bunch of tiny projects.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Susan. Mark, further questions?
Yeah. In Graham's letter to you, he explained that they were shocked that the tram had rejected their plan. And I remember bringing up the question of encroachment into the right of way. And I'm not familiar with gondola right of ways at all. To what extent, it appears on this particular site plan that there's still some incremental encroachment of the building 3.3. And I'm assuming that since they put this together, that's approved, but can we just understand what an encroachment is and isn't?
So I'm gonna just speak to what the letter from the tramway board said. And they speak about the 35-foot easement in the air for the pathway of the gondola cabin. So you can kind of see on here, there's a lot of going on with lines, but the entire gondola easement is about 100 feet. And there's a center line, which is the pathway of the gondola. So the easement, the air easement that the tramway board is looking at is approximately 35 feet with center over that gondola pathway. And that is the area that the buildings can't be within. So being within the 100-foot easement somewhat is okay, as long as you're not in that air space.
That's what the dotted line is that crosses that one building.
Yes, and
That's the 100-foot easement.
and I don't want to speak further because I don't have any exact knowledge of the precise reasons why the tramway board said no to that former site plan. The applicant wants to speak to that, they can, but that is what the letter explained from the tramway board.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Mark, Mike, questions for staff?
No questions, thank you.
I don't have any questions either. How about the applicant presentation, Graham?
Oh.
Easy there.
Hello, Graham Frank from BGV. Sorry we came back with this one. I promised you guys we would keep moving forward with new ones, but this was a new development on this one for us. I think Sarah's presentation laid it out very well. We had to get a planning approval to submit a formal tram board application. Mark, you're exactly right. The preliminary read from our consultant, who used to be on the tram board, was that the last plan would be acceptable to them. But when we took it to them, the geometric box that they draw around the towers, when you consider a tower failure, wind, all of the things that come along with that, that's where they asked us to push those buildings over, not out of the 100 feet, but with the SAG calculations, everything that would go into it with a catastrophic failure. This is what they were comfortable with. And so it was a smaller geometric box around that gondola line than the 100 feet, but it was less than what we had stipulated with our buildings on the analysis. So that led to us going through this. I think Sarah did a good job of explaining as we continued forward from here with the building permits on the first 8 units, 4 buildings, and the infrastructure permits. We continued to hone in on what was there, what trees were there, what was acceptable in the right of way, stormwater runoff, all of those things, which brought us back to what you see today. We've been heavily involved with staff. It is our desire to keep as many mature trees as possible as well, because it enhances the site. And so working with Shannon's team, Sarah's team, I think we have gotten to what is the most acceptable plan that accommodates fire turnaround, parking, refuse, garbage, safety from the gondola, and then still a good site layout that is, we believe, still in line with that initial approval, while still preserving what was the keynote for all of us, the wetlands and the revegetation and the rehydrology going back into the wetlands. So all of those things were taken into account to put this in front of you while still trying to maintain a great neighborhood. And I think one thing that has been the most significant discovery in all of this, as we did the clearing on the site, the thing that came to our attention especially is up to 12 feet on any mature tree out there, there are no limbs. Why? Because the willows grow up to that level and the tree branches die. And so as we cleared that site, it became really apparent the thing that's really providing that impermeable screening into those sites is all of those willows. And so we think as we come back with these 12 to 14 foot trees that are not deciduous, right? They're all needled trees. We think that that'll actually enhance the buffer of what's there today outside of the wetlands and create that along Park Avenue. Right now, the construction fence is replacing what was there before with the wetlands. And so that is where we think that trade-off will happen to get that buffer back along Park Avenue and provide it, A, for people traveling Park Avenue, but B, for those homeowners that are living inside of the site. So with that, any questions that I can answer for you guys, absolutely welcome.
Thank you, Graham. Questions, Mike?
No questions, but thank you.
No questions. I appreciate the extent of explanation of your philosophy about the trees that you went into.
Mark, is there any questions for Graham?
No questions.
Matt, questions?
No questions. Thanks.
Elaine?
A question about the willows.
You bet.
So those are all going to be removed along Park Avenue, or you're keeping?
Only in that site constraint. So you can actually see the line of disturbance there where the gondola line intersects right to there. And then from there, Elaine, as you continue to travel on down Park Avenue, all those will be preserved and hopefully will get even more robust with the reintroduction of that water that was bypassing through the site there, through that drainage that was dug back when they built the gondola. All of that water is now effectively being redirected into the wetlands. And so you're getting a lot wetter downhill space today than you were when we started construction, when we cut that off and redirected the water. And that'll continue as we finish construction.
So I guess I'm talking about the willows that are closer to the new proposed roundabout. I think
All of that has already been removed from the edge of building. So if you come down, Sarah, off of the lowest building in the middle of the screen there, to the left of it, if you drew a line straight to a little bit to the right of that, from
like
there,
there were willows
from there
all
all the
around
way to the
north.
roundabout have all been removed.
Oh, I thought I I just saw tons of them today driving in.
Let's look at the photos that the applicant provided. Will that help?
Well, probably that road covers, the new road will cover part of them anyway, so probably irrelevant now that I look at it. Sorry, thank you.
Alan, any questions for Graham?
Thank you.
You bet.
I don't have any questions either. Thanks, Graham. All right, we'll open it up for public comment. We'll start and I remind folks to keep it to 3 minutes, and we'll start with those online or on the phone. So please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen, or press *9 if you are attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself.
I'm going to start in alphabetical order, starting with Alex Dorotic.
Hello, Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. My name is Alex Dortic. I'm an attorney representing one of the Woods homeowners, and she's asked me to sort of express her misgivings about this project as it's currently constituted. Now, this project was originally approved with a number of waivers, and it's detailed in your report. I'm not going to go through all of those, but there were a number of sort of things that were accounted for this project to be in the manner that it was originally constituted. And now some of those seems to have changed. Now, the first thing I really want to note on is that the 35-foot air easement seems to have been an existing requirement, and it's one that could have or should have been known about when this was originally proposed, and when the developer came back and had the renderings and everything else. And it seems like from the homeowner's perspective that that's something that should have been known. And so it's confusing as to why there now have to be these major modifications based on something that should have been accounted for. It was gratifying to hear one of you ask a question about the movement of the townhomes along Woods Drive on sort of the top end of the development, because they are moved. They were originally in what was approved at the end of December, sort of turned a little bit sideways, and a little bit spaced further apart. There was more vegetation, and there was more preservation of trees. The conceptual plan stated that the developer needs 32 trees along Woods Drive, and they're just not there anymore. And I can understand issues with, well, that's in the right of way, but you can't put trees in the right of way, and other sort of too close to the buildings. But that's sort of the problem, is now that these townhomes are right next to each other, and that's a much different look than a typical residential neighborhood along a street in Breckenridge. And so my client really takes great issue with now what we're looking at, what could almost be called row houses, and these sort of large alterations being made to make this project work when things like the gondola spacing should have already been accounted for. And so what she would like, and I think a number of the other homeowners would like, would be to sort of, let's see if we can start again and maybe come up with a site that more fits the culture, the existing architectural standards of Breckenridge.
Thank you, Alex. Do you have anybody else?
Would anybody else like to give public comment online? Please raise your hand using the Zoom controls. No additional commenters.
Thank you, Sarah. Anybody in the audience wish to comment? Please step to the lectern, state your name, your address, and please keep it to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Richard Himmelstein. My residence is at 675 Peak Six Trail. I wanted to make a further comment I heard tonight. I recall the same developer had a same issue with the tramway at Grand Colorado 3, so I'm kind of surprised there's an issue again. I also wanted to mention about all the trees being removed along Park Avenue Basically, because they're losing that tree, putting in the drainage there instead, I just think that you need to reevaluate the positive points and go 0 or negative points for the drainage, because if you look at the site, you see the drainage change. The one other thing I just want to mention is about the landscaping along Woods Avenue. Basically, if you go to the concept plan, November 14, 2023, it expressly shows single car garages and smaller buildings. At least that's what I believe. And the present plan is 2-car garages. And when they came through and got their original approvals, I did not object to it because the building had a lot of tree landscape. Now I look at it, and from the radius of the Woods Drive turn to those 3 units, they went from having 11 existing trees and 21 trees added. So it's going to be a 32 total trees they're going to have. They're now down to 8. So because they squeezed those buildings so close together, it does not meet the conceptual plan. So either they have to meet the policy 22 landscaping, or they have to meet the conceptual plan that was agreed to in the development. Otherwise, we'll have an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Himmelstein. Anybody else wish to comment? All right, we'll close the public commenting and move to commissioner comments. I think we'll include this time the question for each commissioner. Does the commission agree that the modified landscaping plan and tree buffer retention meet the requirements of the development agreement? So I'll open it up to comments and that question. Mike?
As far as comments go, I think this is an unfortunate circumstance and timing. I believe Graham when he said that one of their consultants was previously a board member in the Tram Authority. And I've been involved in a lot of design projects and I've seen changes. Said that, I think that this project is otherwise compliant. I think Sarah has explained the difference between the multifamily development and single family developments and the necessary setback. I think Mark asked good relevant questions on that during Sarah's presentation. So my comment and my answer to the question is I do believe that we would have approved this project as amended or modified had it been brought to us originally, and I see no reason not to approve it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mark?
I have neither questions or comments.
Okay, and as to the question. Like we read that question?
Yes, please.
Does the commission agree that the modified landscaping plan and tree buffer retention meet the requirements of the development agreement?
I think that it does.
Thank you. Susan, comments?
No, I have no comments, other than I agree with Mike that this is an unfortunate development. And I do think that the answer to the question is yes.
Thank you. Matt?
Yes, I think it still meets it.
Okay, great, thank you. Elaine?
I agree.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I like the wording, my fellow Commissioner Giller, that I think if it was proposed as it is now, we would approve it. I think actually we're better off with the newer large tree that they're proposing, because I felt when we walked the site 2-3 years ago, I thought a lot of the lodgepole pines we were trying to preserve were very leggy and would not provide a lot of screening, and I wonder how many years of life they have left anyway. I also think if we were presented this footprint and the previous footprint, this one is actually denser, closer together, and takes up, and overall it's a smaller footprint with less overall impact and benefits the whole area. I think the people that are most impacted by this will be the eventual owners, because they're buying units that are closer together. So I agree that it meets the development agreement.
Thank you, Alan. I will echo my fellow commissioners. It is an unfortunate thing that this is before us again, but as Mike said, I think that if it was before us in this form, originally we would have passed it at that time. I think it meets the development code. And I also, want to reiterate the landscaping, that these new trees and the amount of trees, I think is a plus at this point. So, I would agree that it does meet the requirements of the development agreement. Do we need to do a vote on this, Chris?
Well, since it's a hearing, we'll have a motion and a vote.
So can I get a motion to approve?
I gotta get the.
You and Mike can race.
H is it?
Let's see.
Okay, I'll move. I'll move approval of parcel 3 duplexes site plan modification request, PL 2024-0302, PL 2025-0116.
I second the motion.
Great, thank you. Roll call, Chris.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Fruchter,
Yes.
Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Ms. Proper,
Yes.
Ms. Gort.
Yes.
Great. So that passes, and I thank everyone for attending. We will move on to the Payne residence at 467 Hamilton Court, PL 2025-0133. Would anybody care to call this one up? Anybody? No, it'll stand as approved. And we'll move on to the Christie Heights Hazardous Fuel Reduction Project, Christie Heights Subdivision, PL 2025-10143. Would anyone like to call this one up?
Like, please call me.
Did you want to call it up, Chris?
No.
Or Cliff?
No.
All right, then we'll stand as approved. And with that, we'll move on to town council summary.
With the approval of the Christie Heights, I just want to acknowledge Cliff's work in the last week. He really, he spent a lot of time just to make it happen, to get this going for their grant. So we just want to acknowledge his work and diligence of reviewing all those properties over the last week. So thank you.
So my biggest day of walking 6 miles in one day, but it's also miles of tree inspections, if you can imagine that.
How did the ankle feel?
Terrible.
Does this mean there'll be more snow on the cross-country trails?
Yes and no. I mean, they're definitely thinning out a lot, primarily willows in that area as well, just trying to reduce that fire risk. Yeah.
May I ask kind of a conceptual question? What percent of the various subdivisions have proposed mitigation tree removal plans, and how much more of this will we see, and what are we learning? Go ahead, Cliff.
Yeah. So currently on my desk right now, we have the Christie Heights, we have Sunrise Point. Let's see, Edelweiss. There's quite a few kind of HOA wide implementations of HFR, just hazardous fuel removal. All of these, well, not all of them, but the Sunrise Point and Christie Heights were funded by the Summit County grant program from the Wildfire Council. So a lot of people are taking advantage of that. I don't have an exact number for you, but since my tenure here, we've done hundreds of individual tree permits, including the large HOA wide. So if you think of the first 5 filings of the Highlands, they did their individual property as well as their open space. Then the next year, last year, the golf course 1 and 2 came in, did individual properties as well as their open space. There's also further work being done by the town itself. So our open space is actively working with the Forest Service to kind of assess what our open space parcels are. And then on top of that, there's also a Blue Rivers Wildfire Ready Watershed Working Group currently going. It's a very long name, cannot tell you the acronym. They are currently working at assessing pre and post fire. That will include fuel reductions, infrastructure implementations, all kinds of things. So the town and our organizations and community partners, we are very engaged in wildfire resiliency and our wildfire risk, just reducing it in general. Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yep. And anytime if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to myself.
And I think also while we're on the subject really quickly, Cliff spent a lot of time looking at proposed state legislation and provided extensive comments on that because they're really, in addition to us being really focused on wildfire mitigation and prevention, we also do want to make sure we honor the integrity of our historic resources in town. And so very similar to the town of Crested Butte and other historic or towns and communities with historic districts, Cliff is one of the leaders at providing comment to express some of the concerns where there's maybe a little disjointedness between the emphasis on really building hardening, defensible space, along with protecting our historic resources. So I just thought with Lindsay here today, she's probably aware of that legislation as well, that we're on the record as of being concerned about where that was going related to our historic district. And very similar to how the commission previously kind of did a carve out of the conservation district and other areas in the core of town, and one of those areas treated differently than the areas that were further out and more interfaced with the wildlands.
And I'll just make the comment, a lot of the motivation here is because of the insurance situation that's changing.
Yes.
That brings a lot of homeowners who would have sat this out to the forefront to try to lessen their insurance exposure.
Correct. And definitely with our fire district here, Red, White, and Blue, Matt Benedict, he is doing a lot of assessments across the town, basically providing people with recommendations, and then we'll go and do a follow-up inspection and then do a report for them to actually provide to their insurance companies. So I think we are very engaged with that, but you are very correct, Mark, because of the insurance issues, which there's been some recent legislation at the state level regarding insurance. So we're engaged, and we'll definitely update if there's anything important for the commission to know.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cliff.
Mark? Thanks. And I do have just a couple other matters after this. The council update will be pretty brief. They discussed noxious weed management. There's been some concerns expressed about, chemicals and what's being used in terms of herbicides and where we treat our right-of-ways and other publicly owned properties. And so the town we're just taking a closer look at that, and we're experimenting with some different things, trying to be as gentle as we can in the landscape, but not saying that we're going all organic with our treatments. We're not, because we also have an obligation to remove noxious weeds within our right of ways and properties we own. So anyway, but that is something that we're actively working on, and it's been council direction to look at that. Secondly, down at the old DNR kennel site by the Gold Hill Trailhead, that's where the Excel liquid natural gas facility, the temporary one, is there. The council has pretty much agreed to extend that for another year, that lease to them, understanding that this is the last extension basically they can get. This is considered a temporary facility. They're going to have to find a permanent location a year from now. Essentially, they'll have to have that lined up so they can continue to provide that backup gas, to be basically inject that into the gas system in case we have real cold days in the winter. That's what it's there for. So anyway, that was approved. And then the big discussion was really around the runway project on Block 11. And the council agreed to proceed on the horizontal infrastructure budget. They basically approved that, which will allow all the roads, infrastructure, sewer, water, all that to go in. And, you know, obviously the clearing, excavation, all that on the property. So that has been approved by the council. I believe in July, they'll be discussing vertical dollars for that. And this is being discussed in 2 phases. So the northern phase is give or take 80 units, southern maybe around 70 to 75. They'll be discussing phase 1 come July. So anyway, that's all moving forward. There were some questions, some serious questions from the council. They're just concerned about cost. Obviously, it's a very high ticket project, and construction costs are high nowadays. So anyway, we are going to proceed with the infrastructure and laying that in place. So anyway, that's my update from the council. Any questions on the council?
Mark, if they're gonna do horizontal, have our approvals gone far enough that they know where to place risers and drops for all the utilities for each unit? I know we approved an overall site plan, but so is that good enough to say this is gonna be a single family attached and all that?
I believe so. Shannon, do you have any thoughts on that?
Generally, I think there's enough information.
Anything else? Okay, other matters. July 1st is our next planning commission meeting. We do not have any applications in front of us that need to come to us. And since it's 4th of July week, we are suggesting we cancel that meeting.
Oh.
In it.
This rarely happens.
Not since I've been.
So it hardly ever has. So, but anyway, yeah, so we will officially cancel the meeting and go through the channels we need to do that.
Do we need a motion to cancel or?
I don't believe, I believe when I read it said the chair or the director can cancel it, but, but just for good posture here, why don't we see if we can have a motion in a second and a vote?
Sounds good.
We cancel the July 1st meeting.
Second.
As there are no agenda items, no applications, yeah, in front of us.
As much as we would like to be here, I would move that we can cancel since there's no agenda.
Guess we'll need a roll call then.
Ms. Gort,
Yes.
Ms. Proper,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Guerra,
Struggling.
yes, Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Director,
Yes.
Mr. Geller.
Yes.
And for the record, all respondents are also here.
Okay, one other thing. I just wanted to debrief a little bit on our first item. Mark, thank you for disclosing that, the email for the public. And the main thing we want to try to do is, as we've talked about before, avoid ex parte communications. And that includes communications between planning commissioners, about, this is something we should be looking at, that kind of thing. Prior to the meeting itself, we want that information in this setting shared with each other. So I think we went through the right channels to do that today, and that worked out well. Just a reminder that's, we'll try to avoid that in the future. And sometimes it just happens. And okay, it's not the end of the world if it happens. Make sure to disclose that. And just like if you have conversations with, people about a project, outside of here, the best answer is I can't speak about that because it's an active application that we're basically going to be sitting in judgment on in a few weeks. You can talk to people about it all day long once it's, approved and, off your plates. But, so just a reminder on that, and thanks. I think we handled that appropriately. So.
I have a question, because I did stop by the site and there were people there that came and talked to me that, and how much can we talk to them about, or? I don't know, it's just
You
interesting.
can answer questions if you're on the site
They're like,
and you're
What
like,
it's gonna
what,
be to about there, for the,
yeah, I mean, there's a fine line because I think in that token, you can ask questions of staff. It's a little more difficult when you're starting to like kind of do independent questions with the applicant. But I think if it's, you're going to the site and you're viewing it and they approach you because they're like, why are you on the site? And you can identify you're with the planning commission and you're just viewing it. And that's probably about as far to the extent as what you could do versus having them give you a private, kind of tour of the site or things like that. But there is under our own rules, and I think also the rules pertaining to ex parte contact, you can ask clarifying questions ahead of the meeting. And we actually encourage everyone to do that so that, you're prepared.
okay.
Yeah, Chris's point's really good there. We still encourage you to reach out to us before a meeting. That's fine. We can have all the conversation we want between staff and the commission. It's just that when you guys have conversations beforehand, and this has happened in other situations where two commissioners talk, the other five don't even know what's going on, so those are the types of things we obviously want to avoid. So.
And I would just offer the idea that when I do a site visit, I try to wear one of the planning commission jackets so that I'm identified. And I think, people have responded well to that.
Thanks, Susan.
Okay, any other issues, comments before we close this meeting? All right, it's 7:46 or 7. I'll close the
6:46.
6:46. Yes, it is.
46 Central Time.
We'll close the June 17th meeting.